one of the major headwinds that they had with this, very different, very interesting piece of new hardware was the PSP. And at that same E3, Sony was showing that off, and the PSP launched slightly later in the United States. I think it was early the following year, if I recall. But everybody was comparing the two together. And again, the consensus among people who were in the industry, following the industry, was like that the PSP was just a vastly more appealing piece of hardware. And it was this corner that Nintendo was stuck in of being kiddie was so pervasive and so negative for within that group. Like, people wanted to get out of that. Like, we do not want to be kiddie. Like, games are finally for adults. We talked about this in our episode when I went to the Playboy Mansion. Actually, about how there was this trend around this time of like this
early 2000s.
This narrative of like, games are for everybody, games are for adults, more adults are playing games. Wow, like I didn't realize this is happening. It's like a major shift.
And also, games are cool. It's cool to be a player of video games.
Right, look at this M-rated game. I'm choking this guy out in this manhunt. Isn't that cool? Wow.
But it is that sense that like they were trying to not only show that games are for adults, sure, but like they were also trying to get out of that thing where it's like games are not for like that nerdy kid in the basement.
Right.
The guy with no friends.
Right.
They were trying to give this ulterior image of, playing video games is like a cool thing to do.
Yeah.
And Nintendo was like failing at that.
And the PSP, I mean, I love the PSP. The PSP had a lot going for it.
Yeah.
The games looked great. Like, it looked like barely a step below like what a PS2 could do at the time. So it was like, wow, this is like having a console game in my hand. It had that big widescreen, which was
really
like
nice.
a major. It's like, oh my gosh, like a widescreen. Like even like PS2 games weren't widescreen. Nobody had a widescreen TV then.
Yeah.
Like, oh my gosh, this feels like futuristic.
And you were holding it in your hand.
And the design of it was just very sleek, and like that was like classic Sony doing Sony stuff.
Right. It looks very expensive.
And the word that everybody would use to describe the PSP was sexy. It's so sexy.
They loved
and it used to drive me crazy. I was like, I don't think it's a great word to be describing a piece of hardware with. But everybody felt that way, and it went all the way where you had this viral photo of Jessica Chobot licking the thing.
Yeah. It's very adult.
It is. And this just kind of became like, the rallying cry of like, oh my gosh, the PSP is amazing. Like, this is just gonna revolutionize. I'm ashamed to pull out a Game Boy if I'm at a movie theater, but I wouldn't be ashamed to pull out a PSP.
That's what I'm saying. It's all about like the reputation of the video game player, not like the actual. It's like they're really working to change the perception that other people had of people that like video games.
So again, if you weren't around, like, this may all seem kind of like foreign to you.
And stupid.
And because it's like, like we have a Switch, like you see people with a Switch everywhere, like, and it's like, young people, old people, whatever, like big deal. But like that was such a hurdle back then.
It was.
Of being pigeonholed of like, this is for little kids.
And again, you would be judged.
Yes.
Like I had friend groups that would be like, why are you still playing video games? You are not 10 years old.
Yeah.
You are in college. Like, do something cool.
Yeah. So the DS, while innovative, clearly interesting, like it was not breaking those allegations of being for kids when it's like, we got, another Mario game on another Nintendo handheld that looks kind of funny. Versus the PSP. Like this is really like one of my very strong memories and takeaways of just like everybody just like going gaga over the PSP, where it's like, the DS is pretty cool. They're both cool, but like, maybe people are sleeping on this DS a little bit because they are so
because of the
in
perception
love
of
with the PSP
and the general perception and culture of the early 2000s.
Yeah,
was really a factor in this.
Totally,
it would not be. In the year 2024, it would be a very different landscape.
Yeah.
But back then, that became like a huge thing,
Yeah.